This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we also take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 26th of February, 2020, and I am DM.
I'm Tom.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Star, Uhuru men plan to kick DP RUTO out of Mount Kenya.
Wow.
A mouthful as usual. In the Standard, Uhuru power deal ends Sanko era. And in the Daily Nation, beginning of the end for wild Sanko era.
Yes.
So let's take the Star and then we'll move on to the Nation.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so the Star is telling us that Mount Kenya business and political elite have teamed up to scheme on the removal of RUTO.
Yes.
From, or not really the removal of him from office, but to dilute his influence and power.
Yes. Ahead of 2022.
Yes, in central Kenya ahead of 2022.
Yes.
And so on Monday, this group of about 5 governors, 50 MPs, senators, and ex-legislators met at Safari Park.
Yeah.
And I think the meeting agenda was a 2.1. The first was the upcoming Meru BBI meeting that will be happening on Saturday.
Yes.
But also the second one, they tell us, is now the scheme.
Yes.
To trim his clout in Mount Kenya.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's underway.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Yes. Same here.
They brought out the accusations.
Yeah.
Which we have been seeing on the headlines and in the news past few months, and we'll continue to see until 2022.
Yeah.
Now they're bringing out the money. I mean, for them to really put it in the fore. When you read the story, and even the subtitle there, it says, "Businessman Peter Munga governors start campaigning against DP." You see, they're front-loading people with clout and money.
Absolutely.
But then I see the Star playing into, or rather pushing a narrative about the politics of persecution.
Yes.
And casting the DP William Ruto as a victim. And you know what?
Yes.
It's working.
Oh yeah. Let me tell you, people love the underdog.
Absolutely.
Don't you guys remember the Change the Constitution movement that was headed by Jenga Karume and co. That was trying to stop Moi from becoming president. I mean, the guys had all the money. They could stop a presidential candidate if they wanted. And that's the part I'm talking about. I am seeing this pattern happening again.
I think we toss that one.
I think we toss it.
As I give the criteria that we use to judge these papers. Number 1, is it topical or speculative? Repetitive or groundbreaking, and finally thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yes, absolutely.
Now let's move on to the Standard and the Daily Nation about Uhuru and Sanko, the Sanko era.
This guys was a landmark thing that happened at State House yesterday. So yesterday, Governor Mike Sanko handed over powers and functions to the national government pursuant to Article 187 of the Constitution. And some of those functions include health services, transport services, county public works, utilities and ancillary services, as well as county government planning and development. I think he's actually left a shell of the county government because those are things.
The deed of transfer to add will be effective for about 2 years, 24 months. After which it is renewable. That's what the deed of transfer says.
2 years, because it's 2022. It's going to be an election year, so who knows who's going to be in power. But then you had something to say.
This is a big shame on your friend Sanko. Even a class monitor in a small class, you feel so embarrassed when your tasks are taken away from you and given to a bigger boy or a bigger girl, meaning that you do not have the capacity to execute your functions, number 1, or you do not have the maturity or whatever else. But then the papers, the Standard tells us also that this is a Sanko option. It is an option that Sanko decided to take himself because the others were very unattractive. He is in the middle of an impeachment process, and he also has cases pending in court for criminal proceedings because he's accused of graft.
I actually think this is a mini plea bargain deal by Sanko.
You're right. The Standard calls it a sweetheart deal because it's a soft landing.
And give it to the guy. This is a very pragmatic decision to have. Now, the only person you can blame for the transgression of the county government is the national government. But as well, who says that there was no backdoor deal that said, give me those powers and then I will ensure your cases
are not do not carry on.
Don't carry on.
But whichever way, it is embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed if I was him.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the question that the Standard posed, I think, 3 days ago. Are we seeing the end of Sonkonization, the end of the Echesa eras, the Babu Awino eras?
Yeah. Absolutely. You see what's happening here is that Uhuru and the elite are taking back control.
Yes.
Which they ought to have from the very beginning. There's a book that's just been published about why we should trust the elites a bit more and trust the masses a little less.
Who wrote that book?
Some American political scientist. I'm yet to get my hands on it, but very soon I will. And it's for reasons like this, you know, the fact that you've got the Sanko types of this world, the Waititos. I'm not saying that they're necessarily bad people, but they're not necessarily.
I'm saying they're bad.
Let me tell you guys, if I was Mike Sanko, I would not be embarrassed. You see, look at it this way. I think in the end, this is a money game. About March 2017, 2018, I think March 28th, the Nairobi County government made 120 million shillings in one day. Now, if a county government can make that amount of money, even let's say they make 80 million shillings per day on average for the 261 working days we have in 1 year, do you know how much that is? That's about 20 billion shillings. Now, Uhuru Kenyatta can actually use 20 billion shillings to pay interest on SGR without having to ask KRA to continue pushing Kenyans to pay more taxes. This is a money game, and if you are going to be Uhuru Kenyatta controlling Nairobi, you will have easy money coming in. I think totally for me it's a resources game.
I think it's a money game, yes, but it's also a power game.
Yeah.
Nobody takes on power with the intention of relinquishing it.
Absolutely.
And then if it's relinquished in this way, where you go and put on a suit and sign it at State House in front of cameras that you have given away the power, I mean, it's a tail between legs situation. Even if it's a plea bargain for you, it's the less of the, it's the least terrible of the other options that he has.
I agree.
So who do we give the winning headline to?
I'm so happy.
I think we have it to the Standard.
To the Standard,
I think the Standard is good.
Crafted, yeah?
Yes.
So we toss the Daily Nation.
Absolutely.
Right. And onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country.
Yeah.
We have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge the cartoons. Are they humorous or dry?
Yeah.
Satirical or pessimistic? Finally, effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
What do we have in the Standard?
In the Standard, we have Gado has drawn Hosni Mubarak, like Egyptian mural, ancient mural on the wall.
Yes.
In the classic Egyptian pose, but then he's holding an AK-47.
Yeah.
And there's 2 Hosni Mubaraks, and it's showing us that there's many more because it's forming a pattern. It says Hosni Mubarak 1928 to 2020.
Yes.
I think this comes after the Egyptian government announced Hosni Mubarak's death at 91. And perhaps what Gado is depicting here is the long continuation of his reign. He was in power for 30 years. So he's showing a chain of Hosni Mubaraks, showing one pharaoh. The first pharaoh is Hosni, second is Hosni, all the way down. Clever. But then he has used guns to install himself.
Very clever.
I quite like this cartoon. I think it's a good contender. What do we have?
As usual, Gado has depth.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Nation.
In the Daily Nation, we have Ndula has drawn a train, which is the SGR on tracks, elevated tracks on pillars, and next to the train is a gigantic pig. And the pig is eating the SGR from the last carriage.
Yes.
It's making it look like a chain of sausages.
Yes.
And it says Jubilee Gravy Train. And on the pig, there's a tattoo there that says Tano Terra.
Absolutely.
And the reference here is yesterday's headline, I think, in the Daily Nation. It was talking about how Kenyans have been ripped off with the SGR compared to the one that Tanzania will get. Tujay gave a fairly good differentiation between the class 1 and the class 2 rails. And I don't think that has, the Kenya SGR hasn't been done justice in terms of the quality and excellence of this railway that we have and the train. It really hasn't. And here's just a few statistics, a few facts. So our SGR, for example, has no level crossings. We have either overpasses or underpasses. Ethiopia, for example, which has a class 2 standard of construction, on the other hand, has about 200 ground crossings, right? Now, ground crossings are for like the 19th century. These are the things we built in 1895. Now, do Kenyans want us to build a class 2? Did they want us to build a class 2 railway in the 21st century, similar to that we did in 1895? Surely speaking, right? So we have, and these are the factors that make the cost per kilometer go up. The fact that you're building overpasses, the fact that you're not building on the ground. These are some of the things that Tanzania, I don't think, will factor in, and that's why the SGR will be cheaper than ours. Absolutely. But we are living in the modern times. Kenya is the leader, is the hub for the region, and so we have to make investments that are commensurate with our vision.
I agree.
I think we also need clarifications in terms of the returns and the projections.
So on that account, we toss that.
I was going to toss it anyway.
And they're part of the Ignorance Project.
Precisely.
In the Star, we have the senator for Narok. He's called Ole Kina.
The
Ledama. And his face is there with a huge afro, and it says hair, but then it's been defaced to say hate.
Well, that's normally his hair.
Yeah, he does have an afro. And then the caption there is, cut it out, never. So Ozone is telling us that he's using his hair to represent, I don't know, hate.
Yeah, terrible.
I think we have a winning cartoon.
We have a winning cartoon and a winning headline from the Standard. And so what's our final thought?
Now, our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Salt, Shube, A World History by Mark Kulansky. He was called Kulansky. You know people eat salt, so Kulansky, salt.
So, Kulansky wrote this book in 2002, and the book tells a story of salt, from its early uses in food preservation to its role as a precious commodity that drove trade and conquest. So the book sheds light on the political conflict sparked by society's demand for salt, as well as the environmental damage brought about by the salt industry. So each day, people consume approximately, guess how much salt?
How much?
Just a teaspoon.
Wow.
Which is a lot for salt.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and if you don't eat enough salt, you will suffer from headaches, muscle weakness. In other words, salt is essential for our survival. Lack of salt can actually cause death. So historically, the value of salt covers all spectrums, including politics, economics, health, and even culture. And so since salt was not as readily available back in the day as it is today, it was a much sought after good, much sought after commodity. In fact, it was actually the first international trade good. It was the first commodity to be exported and imported, and was even used at money because it was considered that precious. And it's salt that gave human beings a way to preserve food. Salt also has cultural meanings in different parts of the world. In Japan, it's thought to ward off evil spirits, and interestingly, also in Judaism and Islam, they have the same belief. In ancient Egypt, it was believed to increase libido, so priests were not refused to take salt for that reason. What does salt signify in Kenya? I think it signifies your ability or inability to cook well. Too much salt, too little salt, no salt.
And if you want to kill snails, you pour salt with them.
True. So that is the long and short of the book Salt.
So absolutely. Now, what the Egyptians used salt for, and they say some of the earliest burial sites for human beings were actually found in Egypt, and that was around 3000 BC. And this in the burial sites, they found freshly kept bodies. This was even before the pyramids.
Yeah.
And where they found these burial sites was just at the edge of the desert, right? No, actually not too far away from Cairo. Now, they said that the reason this happened was the sand had such, large salt particles that help preserve these bodies, right? Now, the Egyptians actually got this, they learned from this and started keeping and preserving bodies using salt. Now, I want to describe how the tombs used to look like, how the Egyptian tombs used to look like. They were divided into two parts. Yeah. So below ground is where the bodies used to be kept. Yeah. Above ground, now they would offer food offerings to the body, and they would and they would sprinkle a lot of table salt on them. Now this is where, guys, there is class divide. Even in Egyptian civilization, 3000 BC, there was class struggle. Now in our context is hustlers and dynasties, and I just want to describe some of the food they used to keep for both classes, the poor and the rich. Now I'll start with the poor. For the poor, they were offered just simple bread, beer and onions, and if they were lucky, they were given a little bit of garlic. Now for the dynasties there, they had such a rich variety. Now allow me to read some of what they were offered. So first thing they offered was quail, stewed pigeon, I don't know how they got that, fish, ribs of beef, kidneys, barley, porridge, wine, beer, berries, cheese, and fish.
It's a party in the grave.
It was a party in the grave, but it also tells you, class struggle, not just at the other day. But the good thing that equalized them at least was salt.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the book talks about, an interesting fun fact, is that the struggle over salt was also a catalyst in quite a number of revolutions, right? Political revolutions of not too long ago. So the American colonial revolt, for example, of the 1700s, the French Revolution also of the 1700s, and even the Indian struggle for independence, they were all catalyzed by salt. And so the author tells us, for example, that the American colonies, many of America's early settlers who had settled as fishermen had also begun to extract salt. And they got very successful at it. So they were prosperous and they started to export salt, but the British, being the colonizer of America at the time, didn't want them to become too self-reliant. So they made British salt less expensive than the price of the American salt to damage local businesses. Sounds like bad Samaritan behavior. And then later on, when the American settlers also wanted to expand their trade, the British only provided enough salt for the colonies to produce goods for themselves and Britain, but not for export. Correct. So once again, really trying to hold them off, and that eventually culminated in their agitation for independence from Britain. The French Revolution as well. There's this guy called Louis XVI. Who needed more funds, and so he decided to levy a salt tax. So the French were required by law to purchase a certain amount of salt every month to secure the state's revenue stream. Now, as you said, salt is an essential commodity. So that really, lowered the living standards of quite a number of French people at that time, majority of whom were poor. So once again, that led to French Revolution, a catalyst. And finally, in India, the country's struggle for independence in the early 20th century started as a fight over salt. With the India Salt Act of 1882, the British colonial government was able to establish a salt monopoly, effectively shutting down the local salt economy. And as a result, salt was very highly taxed that most citizens could no longer afford it. And so the British responded violently to the Indian protests and uprisings to that piece of legislation. And by 1930, civil rights leader Mahatma Gandhi decided to channel the burgeoning Indian independence movement into a campaign for salt independence.
Absolutely. Leading people to extract salt, which was against the rules of the colonialists, to the beaches to extract salt. Very interesting. The book also said that during the times of the Roman Empire, the Roman soldiers were paid in salt. How things change. I mean, now salt is one of the cheapest commodities, I suppose, in the world, isn't it?
Absolutely. And yet, So on a day that we had a winning cartoon from the Standard and a winning headline from the Standard as well. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens. Find us on Pang, Free to Air, Go TV, and Star Times. Have a good evening.